Hey, welcome to Saturday Sauna Night. I'm Steve, and tonight I have a kind of a top 10 thing I want to count down. All the cool kids are doing that these days, right? But first, I want to get into actually, just one announcement. So, um, 1 week from today, January 11th, that's next Wednesday, I am really grateful to be a part of this outdoor filmmaker panel, Outdoor Adventures filmmaker panel put on by Connect Marquette. It's going to be at the Peter White Library, 6 o'clock in the Heritage Room. I believe it's a ticketed thing. So if you find the Connect Marquette Facebook page, they have an event for it. Anyway, a little bit more about this thing. So this is going to be really cool. There are some really outstanding, like true filmmakers going to be at this thing. There to really just answer questions, talk a little bit about equipment, kind of what they do. So Kristen Ojanimi, who is the host of Discovering, who I had a chance to interview for the podcast, is going to be there. Benjamin Haight from Haight's Wanderings. Some really cool fishing and outdoor adventure videos on his YouTube channel. And then Seth Waters from Dark Waters Fly Shop. Same thing. Some really cool fly fishing footage and stuff like that. And so I'm really honored to be a part of that because I'm not really a filmmaker like these other folks are. Here I am talking to you on my little Walmart webcam. And but I am grateful to be a part of that and share a little bit about what I've been doing with the podcast as sort of not really trying to be an outdoor filmmaker per se, but trying to be a podcast where we talk outdoors and I get to interview, people who are doing some really cool things. So again, that's next Wednesday, January 11th, 6 p.m., Peter White Public Library. Check out the Connect Marquette Facebook page and their events tab, and you should see details. With that, I wanted to take today's episode and kind of look ahead to the coming year. So this is the first episode of the new year. The last episode of 2022, I had the chance to talk to Danny Hill from the Range Area Mountain Bike Association. Check that one out if you haven't yet. But excited to be kicking off a new year and kind of looking ahead to what's coming up. So without further ado, I just want to get into this. I didn't put these in any particular order. Some of these things I have on my list they're things I do every year, so they might not sound that groundbreaking. But some of them are going to be first time I'm going to this place or doing this thing. And they all, kind of like everything on the podcast, they all connect back to, outdoor living and adventure here around the UP. So again, no particular order here. Maybe I'll go chronological order. So coming up next month, I have the Polar Roll. So the 906 Adventure Team puts this event on. They've been putting it on for, I don't know how many years now. Probably like 9 or 10 years. I know it predates the Marjagessic. But it's a fat tire bike race for those of you who don't know. And I've ridden it twice now. So I had the chance to ride it for the first time in 2021. And because of the way COVID restrictions were working at that time, all of the events were actually considered the EX version. So they kind of spun that as extra enhanced. So it was kind of like a do-it-yourself adventure. You got a GPX file that showed the course. And, in order to successfully finish the ride and, qualify as a finisher, you had to follow that course and record it on your own, tracking device, whatever app or cycling GPS you use. I just use Strava, and then submit that file, and then they'd verify it, and you got your green dot as a finisher. So I did that first in 2021. It was a ton of fun. At that point, it was the furthest I'd ever ridden a bike, especially over snow. And so that year, the course, and I'm trying to remember now. I think the EX courses still mostly follow the NTN system, so the north and south Niquemanau trails around Marquette. And that year, that's basically what it did. You started off down by the lower Ordock, rode all the way up to Presque Isle, did a loop around Presque Isle, which is a great way to kick off the ride. Connected over to the North Trails, basically rode that whole system, or at least the whole system that's groomed for winter riding, and then crossed town on the bike path over to the South Trails, did most of that system, and then finished back at the Ordock. So that was really cool. I feel like doing that back in 2021, I was kind of able to prove to myself that, I can do these long rides. I might not be fast, but I can finish them. And so then last year, 2022, I did the mass start event. So, the main event where everybody lines up, and it's kind of like your, a race, and there's a starting gun, and everyone takes off from the start line. And last year was not as much fun because, there were a few things. The biggest thing, I think, was that I had just had COVID a few weeks prior, and I wasn't still, symptomatic or anything, but the times that I have had COVID, I have definitely noticed like lingering fatigue, and it's really hard to describe unless you've had it, but not any particular type of pain or shortness of breath or anything, just a general fatigue. And that still was really bugging me a lot at that point last year. The other thing was it was super cold. It was, I think the high was like 5 degrees that day, and when we started it was below zero. So that, I don't know. I don't really enjoy riding that much when it's that cold. And the spirit of the event is you come prepared to ride no matter the conditions. That's really the thing with Polar Roll. There's been years, I know, where it's been really warm and the trail got kind of soft and mushy. I know there were a couple of years where there was a big storm, like the night before. And actually last year, there was a pretty good sized storm that blew through. And I know they had to cancel. There originally was going to be this night ride, like the night before the mass start event. And there were actually a few crazies who signed up to do what they called double trouble, where they were going to ride the course or a course at night and then basically ride it backwards in the morning. And I know they had to cancel that because of the way overnight conditions were. But the volunteers and crew got the trails cleaned up really nice, and the trails were great. Like, it was beautiful. I didn't have a ton of fun riding it. Just was not in a good way. And I don't know. Coming across the finish line, I didn't really feel like all that accomplished. I kind of felt disappointed, like I don't know, like I was pushing myself too hard, and for what? But looking back on it, I'm happy I rode it, and I'm really excited to ride it again this year in a month. Spent way too long talking about that. So I'm really excited for Polar Roll. It's hard to believe we're already in January and like we're like in the middle of winter, but I'm already looking ahead and really excited for kind of like late season winter activities, early spring, whatever you want to call it. I think the thing that really does it for me is when the days start getting longer, as they are, slowly but surely. And when we get to that point, toward the end of February, beginning of March, and then progressing through March, with the time change where, um, it stays light later and later and later. And, when you get a spring day and there, there can still be snow or ice or whatever, I just love getting out and going snowshoeing or skiing, on a warm spring day, even if there still is a ton of snow, or ice fishing. I've had days where I've been out on the ice where, there's still a foot and a half of ice on the lake and it's like 60 degrees outside. And so the best choice of attire for those days is like your bibs and then a t-shirt. So that's just a super fun time of year, and try to make the most of winter because it can stick around for a while. Oh, what else? Well, progressing along, I guess, with the seasons. Not long after that comes or no, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was gonna jump into Memorial Day weekend. Oh, this is a big one. The trout opener, the inland trout opener. So as you know, I fish trout year round because I like to do some ice fishing for them. But really the heart of trout fishing for me is the main inland trout season that starts the last Saturday in April and ends, depending on if you're fishing streams or lakes, it either ends at the end of September or the end of October. But I definitely have the most fun kind of at the beginning, toward the middle of the season, than I do late season. I don't know. It is fun to get out in the fall and paddle around and see the colors and stuff, but I never do as well for whatever reason. But really excited for the trout opener this year. So I've fished the opener, I think pretty much every opener since 2017. And I can't remember if in 17 I went out like on the opener, like the next day, or anyway, pretty much have fished it every year since 2017. And well, I'm going to do a whole episode on it as we get closer to it. But 2 years ago, in 2021, was the first year I got together a group of guys and we did it, together. Some of my other fishing buddies. And that was a lot of fun. Everyone caught at least one fish, and some of the fish were big. I think the big fish of the weekend was like 16 inches. And we had everything from like 60 degrees in sun, which is beautiful for late April up here, to by the end of the day, actually, there were big, like couple inch wide snowflakes falling. And it was a good time. We did a little overnight thing and hung out and then went out again the next day, and lots of fun. Last year, a couple of us still went out and we did 2 lakes, just kind of local to here. We didn't do an overnight thing or anything. We did like half a day, and it was okay. I caught a decent sized fish on the first lake we went to, and then no one caught any fish on the second lake. It was one of those type D lakes that just, for whatever reason, those always throw me for a loop. And then I hadn't quite had enough, so I stopped at a little creek that I fish sometimes early season. I've actually fished it on the opener a couple times now, and caught some really nice little good eating size brook trout, like 9.5 inches, perfect size for the pan. So that was great. Ended up keeping my limit that day. So this year coming up in April, I think we're going as a group again, but we have a cabin rented, and hoping to try some new water. I've been kind of scouring the maps and figuring out, based on what the weather might be doing, what the snow conditions might be like, if it's super snowy, and the roads are still impassable by truck, well, here's a couple lakes that are really easy to get to that we can still fish. And if the, then if the roads are drivable and most of the snow's gone, then I want to get to these other ones. So we'll see how that goes. It's coming up the weekend of April 28th through 30th. So looking forward to that one a lot this year. For a lot of people, Memorial Day weekend is kind of like the unofficial start of summer. And so we always do, well, ever since we started camping more, we've done an annual Memorial Day weekend camping trip. That's always a lot of fun. We go with family, and for me, it's always a fun blend of being able to kind of do those summery things, sitting around a fire, cooking food on the fire. I love hearing the spring peepers, and usually they start earlier than that, but they're usually still going around Memorial Day. And it's that trip usually, regardless of where we stay, it's usually, for me, it's a nice blend of spending time with family, doing the summery things, and then I'll usually get out a little bit and fish a nearby stream or lake, depending on which campground we're at. I sort of have those figured out at this point. So that's always a lot of fun. After that, it's basically summer, and kind of the next big thing that's not a specific event but sort of a season almost is June brook trout. As I've gotten more into brook trout fishing, June is just always prime time. I read a lot about people doing really well and catching big fish in the fall. I've read about people doing really well right after ice out. But for me, I don't know if it's just the techniques I use or what, but basically the whole month of June and stretching through July is always, like, I don't often catch a limit of brook trout, but when I do, it's usually in that time frame. I think the other part of it is just the length of the day. I brought that up earlier talking about early spring, late winter, but I love when it's when the sunrise is coming up at like 6 in the morning or even earlier, and it's staying light out till like 10:30 at night. For me, that just means I get to make the most of my time outside and be on the water a lot. And the fishing's always really phenomenal. After that, I don't have specifics here because I think we still have to coordinate these, but the last few years as we've gotten more into camping, and especially since we've got our own trailer that we camp with, we usually do at least one or more kind of family camping trips during July and August. So that's another thing on my top 10 list. Again, no specific trip, but just being able to get out in the summertime, in the middle of the summer, the water's warm. I love to swim, and as the kids, are old enough now where they both go in the water and play and love the beach. Like that's a huge thing. We love doing that. So summer camping trips, I mean, that's kind of like the meat and potatoes of the camping season for me and for a lot of people. Well, after summer camping, this kind of is going to stretch from spring all the way through fall, but this past fall, I got into mushroom hunting. And, some people are like die hard, like, they have their secret spots where they find morels and, they're not going to tell anyone. I kind of stumbled on it by accident, actually. Just walking some trails we normally walk. and just happened to run into a whole bunch of what are called wine caps or wine cap stropharia mushrooms. Didn't know much about them, but looked them up, confirmed the ID with an app I have, which those aren't 100% accurate, but then also verified it in a group I'm in online on Facebook, and they were delicious. And so I thought, well, this is fun. Ended up finding some nice lobster mushrooms, which are really cool. They usually start out as what's called a milk cap, and they get parasitized by this other fungus that turns it orange. And I can't remember the name of the other fungus, but they're delicious. They're called lobster mushrooms because they're the color of like a lobster. They're like a bright, vibrant orange, almost reddish. Really firm texture, really delicious, fried up, sauteed in some butter or olive oil or whatever. And then of course chaga, which actually I did pick some small pieces this fall, but winter is, according to most folks, is kind of the best time to do that. So I'm gonna get out this winter and actually get some more pieces of that and make some tea and other things with it. But I'm also hoping to maybe try it in the spring. I haven't really tried to look for morels before. One time they popped up in our yard, in our old house, and they just kind of showed up and we ate them and they were delicious. But I've never actually gone hunting, so I'd like to try that a little bit this year. Other than that, really looking forward to, again, another camping trip, but the annual fall camping trip we do usually in October. Kind of like our color tour. We've done the Keweenaw a couple times. I think 2 years in a row. The first 2 years we did it kind of like as a big multiple family thing. We did we based out of Houghton Hancock area and then did that back-to-back years. And then we did the Porkies, the Porcupine Mountains. And then last year, I talked about this on the podcast, but we did Twin Lakes State Park up in the kind of the base of the Keweenaw, and did some different stuff around there. That's always a fun trip because you're not doing the typical summer things like swimming and playing at the beach, and usually not a whole lot of fishing for me, but we do some interesting sightseeing stuff, mine tours, museum tours, obviously looking at the fall colors and doing some hikes and stuff like that. So that's always a really fun trip. And then I actually got these out of order, but before that, well, I skipped two things, I guess. September is going to be kind of a busy month. So getting back to bike stuff, I have the Marjagesic coming up. I always used to say Marjagesic, but I guess it's Marjagesic. So I've tried to correct myself. And actually, the original Ojibwe is like Majagesic. It doesn't, have a... When you translate it directly into English, it looks a little odd. But I think what's the word I'm looking for? Anglicized version, is that the right word? Is Marjagesic. Anyway, the big mountain bike race, the 50-mile thing, where I registered for it on the podcast, that's coming up. That's going to be a huge ride because I've never ridden my bike that far. And it's, it's like 6,000 feet of climbing over the course of 50 miles, which usually is more like 60 plus. So finishing that will be an accomplishment, and really looking forward to it though. Mid-September is usually a great time of year up here for mountain biking. The leaves are pretty much all still on the trees. There's a lot of green still. The weather's usually still pretty warm, but conditions are generally pretty dry, and the trails are just kind of in prime shape, in my opinion, in that time of year. There's not usually a lot of mud in the low-lying spots. Things have kind of dried up, and and kind of just enjoy the trails. The other big thing in September, and I haven't been numbering these because, again, there's no order here, but I swear there's 10. Another big September thing that I'm excited for is going to be our second annual Craig Lake trip. So we did 2 whole podcast episodes on this past fall, before we did the trip and then after, and probably do that again this year. But we're going back. I think it's the same weekend. The only difference is we are going to be staying in a yurt this time. Last year as we finished up the trip, it rained a little bit, but it ended up being fine, and we, were able to still have a great time and spend a lot of time fishing and stuff. But, trying to plan it out that far in advance, and also the fact that the backcountry sites are now reservation only, where before they were first come, first serve, we just decided if we book a yurt and we have, a shelter over our heads, we can go regardless of weather and still enjoy the trip. Even if it pours down rain, there's still a boat at the yurt on Teddy Lake. We can still fish a little bit. We can still hang out and have a good time. We don't have to worry about, wringing out our gear and trying to stay dry all weekend. So really excited for our second venture out there. Also for the fishing. Caught some pike, and a couple pike that, were the biggest pike I've ever seen. One of them I couldn't quite get into my net. I got it up alongside the kayak, and just having a fish that size, people who, pike and muskie fish all the time, that'd be no big deal. But for me, who normally brook trout fishes, that's pretty cool. So really excited to do that again. Let me see what else here. I think that's pretty much my whole list. The 10th thing, and I kind of put this as a question mark because I don't have a plan for this, but I do want to try it, is I really want to do a short backpacking trip this summer. I'm thinking maybe like 2 nights, and I just got to figure out where. I've been talking with Kyle, who who has done the podcast with me before, and we were talking about where we might want to base out of to do that. Do we want to try to do like an out and back type thing? Do we want to try and coordinate drop-offs and pickups with vehicles where we can start in one spot and then hike to another spot? I'm thinking that I want to try to focus on the North Country Trail, which is, basically spans the entire UP east to west. So it'd just be a matter of picking a section. I wouldn't mind checking out some of the sections in Marquette County, because there's some really, other than the short hikes I've done along the lake shore off of County Road 550, I haven't really seen any of the sections between where does it come back? Crosses over by Harlow Lake, and then the Little Garlic River. But basically anything between there and Craig Lake State Park, I don't know what's in there. I know it goes through the McCormick Wilderness, which could be cool. I've never been in there. I know there's some pretty intense terrain, though. So that's kind of on the list of maybes, hopefullys for this year. So, yeah, try to get a plan in place for that. But I really, as I go along here, and a lot of this, planning these things, I have to take into consideration the fact that I have summers off, but the people who I might want to go with don't necessarily. They might only have the weekends free. I have 2 young kids, And so leaving for multiple days at a time to do stuff like that isn't always practical. So that's why I kind of want to start with something small. And then, in the future, I really want to do, like a long distance thing. Either backpacking, hiking like that and camping along, or a bike packing trip. The more I talk to people who do that, the more it makes me want to do it. I just had the chance to talk with Danny Hill a little bit about that. I've talked with some other folks I know who do that, and I think that could be a really cool way to see the UP and get some good exercise while you're doing it too. So that's my top 10 things I'm looking forward to most in 2023 as far as like outdoor adventures. The Polar Roll and the Margie, the brook trout opener, going to Craig Lake again. That's the fourth. The Memorial Day camping trip, summer camping trip, fall camping trip. Where am I at here? The 9th would be mushroom hunting, like for real this year, trying to get a little more into it. And then that whole month of June in brook trout. This past June, I had some great days on the water, but I pretty much fished like 2 lakes for the whole month of June. This year, I really want to... I have my favorite lakes that I fish, but I also, there's some streams that I haven't fished now in a couple summers. So I really want to get back to doing that, maybe even if it only for a couple days this summer. One thing I was thinking back to last summer, like, why did I always go, to my local brook trout lake? Why didn't I go to some of these other places? Well, one of the things is at the time, so this would be June of 2022, gas was like $5 a gallon or more. And, sometimes as you go throughout the year and the life continues and seasons change and you have holidays and birthdays and work and this and that, you forget those little details, of the other things that were happening at that point. So I was thinking, why did I drive only like 20 minutes every time I wanted to fish? Well, that's why I didn't do any like long distance trout outings last summer. It was gas was not cheap. So anyway, that's my top 10 things I'm looking forward to most in 2023. Again, wanted to just bring up this outdoor adventure filmmaker panel that I'm really, really excited to be a part of. And I hope, to learn while I'm there. Again, my goal with this podcast is not to obviously be out, out in the field filming a lot of the stuff I do. I get some footage on my phone. I have a little cheap knockoff GoPro thing I use sometimes, but other than that, it's a lot of pictures, just short little video clips. So for my part, I'm focusing more on what I do for this podcast, but I'm really excited to hear from these other panelists who are going to be there, whose work I've been following for several years now as I've gotten more into outdoor adventuring and exploring the UP. And so, again, that's coming up next Wednesday, January 11th, Peter White Public Library, 6 p.m. Gonna be fun. So Dan Coronin is moderating it. He is part of Connect Marquette, but he's also a filmmaker in his own right, and has some documentaries he's done. His most recent, I think, is called The Iron Town. It's kind of about a little bit about the history of Negaunee and iron mining, and sort of forward-looking, I guess, in that it kind of talks a lot about the shift from the mining economy to a more recreation-based economy, and all the trail systems and different things. So he's actually the moderator for this thing. And as far as the panelists, again, it's myself talking about the podcast. It's Kristen Ojanimi from Discovering, and then just her own solo documentaries that she's worked on. Benjamin Haight from the YouTube channel Hate's Wanderings. He has a lot of stuff on, like, I think he focuses a lot on like river muskie. But he has a lot of different fishing and outdoor videos. And then Seth Waters from Dark Waters Fly Shop. So I'm really, really, really excited for that. Check it out. Connect Marquette is the sponsor. Other than that, thanks for listening to Saturday Sauna Night. I'm Steve, and I'll see you again soon.